in general, do we really understand once the economy is open again, once we have a handle on this health crisis, what the lasting legacy of the 2020 recession will be?
So I think one of the things that's becoming very, very clear, and we're already seeing the wheels in motion for this, is just the use of technology, working remotely. I think these are obvious, right? This is something that we're all doing currently right now, and as it turns out, people are pretty good at understanding their systems and getting things to work, and I don't think a lot of productivity is being lost. But I also do think, though, when we think from a macro perspective, there's also going to be a pretty big change in terms of supply lines, in terms of where things are produced, and also wages and labor costs. Now, there's two ways to go on this. One is to say the initial impact is that we're printing a lot of money, we're doing all kinds of quantitative easing, and that creates a lot of money, and that might create a lot of inflation into the future. Others might think that, no, there's going to be a lot of demand destruction over a period of time where you're not going to really have inflation, but you're going to have disinflation or even a deflationary period before you resume. This is the battlefield, right? So we don't know from a bond perspective in terms of where should the long end of the yield curve go, how much inflation should we be discounting or not. That's the big question mark in the bond market. Where I start to lean towards this, though, is as I look at not only the amount of fiscal deficit spending that's been going on, not just in the U.S. but around the world, but if I take the U.S., for example, and see what we've been spending just for the virus, add that to, don't forget, this decade is the decade that the baby boomers all 100% become eligible for Social Security. The deficit was going to rise anyways. So not only do we have this big deficit spend, which was very unexpected, but we have another one coming in the years 2024, 2026, that's going to add even more to the debt. So the question then becomes the dollar, which in bond yields, which have been in a secular decline for 40 years, does the very high levels of deficit, and I'm talking 8, 9, 10%, maybe even a little higher, does that start to matter? Or do we start to think differently about deficits? Because other countries are going to be in the same position as well. So these are key questions that we need to wrestle with.